Hello everyone, and it's once again time to do some coding and check things out, see where we're at. Since we met last, I've jumped in, finished the functions, I've finished the iframes areas. I did a lot of renaming of a bunch of stuff to match my standard, like adding a z to the beginning of each variable just so that they're when they're internal to a function. Makes it easy to tell if it's generator, if it's a variable from that spot, or if it's a global variable or something, or comes from other places. Okay, and so now the next thing I'm doing is actually checking to see if we're hitting to the database and starting to run some of these things. So stuff like the get avatar stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring open the page, and we have that working. Okay, so I'm going to choose an avatar. And technically, if I'm not mistaken, when I choose an avatar, I think I write it immediately to the day. Ah, there we go. That's a good sign. I've chosen one, and it automatically tells me which one I've picked. I have an instance ID from every single person that's coming through, even if you run two different browsers on your system, so that each one can have their own instance. And then, of course, user ID is blank because I have not logged in, so that's a good sign. All that looks good. So the next thing we want to do is let's set some colors. So I'm going to click on him, like his chest, and we're going to make him a nice blue color, dark blue, like I'm almost glowing in the dark. I kind of like that. Alpha joints, we're going to pick those areas, which are the spots in between here. And how are we doing? We still streaming good? Good. Oh, good. I'm watching while I'm running this. I'm watching how everything's going memory-wise and everything, just so I can track it and see how we're doing. Okay, so in this part, I kind of want to make a little bit of a green color, but I don't want to go too green. Let's keep it. I kind of like the black. That actually looks pretty cool. Okay, so now that I've selected those two areas, and we'll check out this whole thing. There's my animations. The good news is it all loaded in. Okay, we're going to go back to the database and double check. Did it set the colors? So let's bring the avatar colors. We set two different things, and look there, we have two different places. That's a good sign. We have animations. I'm going to show you that there's nothing in that table and nothing up my sleeve. No. And now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a walk. So let's see, what kind of walk do I want him to have? Let's start with a happy walk and see what it looks like. Okay, and there's already a bug. Something happened. I have a feeling it didn't load it all the way. We're going to find out. We're going to find out what it did, because that's part of doing what we do. Also, that's all working fine. There's the scroll bar there. That's good. Okay, so just click out of here. Let me see. It went to first person camera. Let me set it on self camera. And I don't see myself. So we lost our avatar, which that's all part of game development. So we're going to give this another try. First thing we want to do is see, did it actually set? Yes, it did set an on walk, and it set it to, let's see, our avatar animation ID is this one. Okay, so it did set it, but for some reason, create user ID is blank. That's fine. That was for this particular user. Okay, so we did lose the avatar there when it saved that setting. So let's dig through the code a little bit and find out what's going on in that place. Okay, so the first thing was it did write the avatar. So here in our functions for our avatars, our WalkTheWeb avatars function, we call this one function avatar session. Okay, actually, let's backtrack this from a different angle. Since I was working in the menu, and let's go through, start looking at some scripts, and let's try to follow where it did on the scripts, if there was anything. The other part we need to check is, were there any clues in the, oops, I didn't mean to run it from there. Let's not do that. Okay, so let me bring open my window, and let's see. Did we get an error here? Because that would obviously make life easier. Nope, it didn't. We didn't get an error. So that means it didn't trip on anything necessarily in the JavaScript, but it didn't have a complete cycle either. So let's find out. Let's follow the path a little bit and see if we can't track down where we're losing our avatar. I'm going to set this screen. It's going to kind of annoy me for a little bit, but I'm going to set it to not quite full, which means I don't have my bottom menu bar. But this way I can bounce back and forth between these two screens fairly easy. I will set it to not completely full. Now what I can do is I can tap here, and go back and forth between the two screens. Just a little easy functioning. I've got it down here in the menu bar too. Okay, so with that said, let's go on to tracking this thing down. Let's find out, first thing, let's get this sized where we can see it on the screen all at once. Okay. We just want to make sure we can see our whole development tools at once. And we're getting a little bit of skip frames. Okay, plan B. I'm going to close that till we're ready to open it again. That'll free up some memory. And we'll see if we can't make this work better. Okay. And we got both those up there. Let's bring this one back all the way across here. Okay, when I run the app, WebGL is kind of, I have a couple things not working right yet, so I'm going to make some adjustments in the system, and then I'm going to actually come back there and work a little bit more in that area of the avatar. It was a nice little test. We're going to show some more animation here coming up shortly, but another day, not today, but another day. In the meantime, the other piece that I was working on is the user login. So let me work on the login process a little bit. Okay, so what I've done so far is in the menu, I created a section in here that I don't need this much of this screen. Let's give it more coding area. Okay, so we're working on the section for registering and being able to set the register your new user. So I'm going to follow this process along, and we're going to finish out the code for it. So the first thing is when I decide, okay, I'm going to create that account. Create that account. Files, find all. Okay, we have create the account, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm just checking the source frame of the box. So let me what do I want to do? Let's see if I come in here and I set in my core file, and I've got a load up sequence, and what I'm going to do is I'm not going to load the whole thing. So I'm going to remark out a couple of these sections, and emit settings. I want to load okay, and let's see if we can't open that. Okay, and do I get, yes, I do get this area. Okay, create my account. Okay, I want to work on this section over here, but I don't want to bring it up all the way with it. I'm bringing up everything. Just some memory management issues. Okay, there we go. Helps if I close some windows on my computer, but we'll get to that. So, next thing I've got. Okay, so now I've set in these things. I've already set up a couple of things. For example, if you start to type, it says poor password weak, and then as you're typing it, it'll actually it'll keep on checking until you have a strong password. So I have that in place. The other thing is I do have it set up confirming the password. So I've done a little bit of validation, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I create this account that I can click create and it actually just builds my new account. So working on this piece, we're going to go in here. Okay, made it stop for now. Okay. Now, when I first opened up the page, one of the things that I ran into and I wanted to make sure was happening is when it loads up, I have a number of iframes that load, and each one of these have access to different functions, and so I really didn't want it to go there naturally. I wanted it to, I didn't want it to create, I didn't want it to open up the pages to expose the code that allows you to upload functions unless you have your session variable loaded so you've actually logged on. So without being logged in, there's other things, there's some of the stuff you can do and some things you can't. So depending on what you're trying to do, like in this case, I'm trying to do a login, so there's no way that I would want to actually, I wouldn't want to go to that area and then not be denied the area because you're not logged in. So this one isn't blocking the logins. Let me confirm that I was testing a few different things. So users, and I put requires login. Okay, so let's take that off there. Otherwise, you gotta be logged in to be able to log in, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm going to, okay, we have that function, we have the index page. There's something I wanted to test. See, right now I'm actually creating, I have all these iframes connected, and if you look on the admin page, there's even more loaded over here for the different admin functionality and everything. So what I kind of want to do is see if I can create and destroy one on the fly while I'm working on it, just so that I don't have to load anything longer than I need. So it doesn't have to start the page by loading all these extra iframes, because we're talking about, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different web pages it browses to when you open. So I would rather see if I can do this dynamically and be able to create them on the fly, which also means destroy them on the fly. So I'm getting a little fancy here. I want to see if it works. ID equals, and I'm going to call this iframes div. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm actually going to be imitating this one right here, and I want to see if it pulls open the page and see if it does everything I want it to do. So that's what we're going to be creating, and we're going to do it dynamically in the code here when I tell it to click the login page. So getting a little fancy with this. The biggest idea is that I just want to be able to create them and not have to preload them. So let's see what we can do with this. It's testing a new functionality, so I just want to see if it's possible. So the first thing we're going to do is, okay, we're going to take, we've got this div, and we're going to create the iframe element within it. So let's see, what's the best way to do that? We start with, well, we first need the div, so let's grab the div. We're going to make sure it's available if this is not equals null. Okay. Then okay, we're going to play around with some JavaScript. I'm going to want to bounce between a couple screens. I'm going to have one over on this other side so I can search and do a couple things while I'm doing it. Append data to div using that. That's what I want to do. I'm looking to, well, inner HTML gets the one thing done. This is what I want. Okay, I looked over on append child. That's what I'm looking to do. Okay, so I'm going to copy over a little piece of code that I just found on Stack Overflow. The idea is, okay, so first of all, this is my div that I want to do it to. The next one is var iframe. Iframe equals okay. Two things I'm going to test out here at the same time. That's create text node. It's not create text node. Let me dig a little farther. Oh, that's what I wanted. I want create element equals create element okay, create element, and I'm going to call that iframe. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this iframe, okay, so then I have my iframe, and I'm going to say iframe ID equals, we're just going to call it test this for now. I'll rename it properly with some strategic thing afterwards. So iframe, we're adding it to the div. Then we're going to say iframe dot source equals, and we're going to call this right here. Okay, so I'm going to call the iframe source, and then I want to know, first of all, let's alert ourselves just for checking the code. The first thing I want to do is iframe.onLoad equals function, and I'm going to tell it unload to let's test a couple things. Let's test first. Let's first see if we get that. Let me see when it's loaded, and then we're going to check the DOM element and see if it's actually there. So create this. Okay, we're going to reload this page, and it's loaded. We're going to open this, create an account, and I'm going to click this button, which should set up the thing, and we're already here. Okay, so now that we're here, I want to come into here, click the page down. We have frames div, and iframe test this. Cool, I was able to create it on the fly. That seemed to work really fast too, which is nice. Okay, so it created the iframe. So unload. And now I want to, now that it's on load, I want to see our iPage equals that. And just to test it, this is the iframes page. Let me make sure. Yes, iframes page. I'm going to make it when it opens this page, let's put in another value. And this is going to just be a testing value. Test this. Test this frame. We'll call it that. I'm going to give it a value of test this frame, just so we know if we're actually getting there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just to make sure everything's working the way I expect it to, I'm going to now say log. I'm glad when I like it when things work. Test equals plus iPage dot get element by ID, and I want it to be test this frame dot value. Okay, so now after it loads that, it should grab the content on the page. It should be able to test that frame and actually grab that value. Let's see if that works. Okay, let's load this back up. Let's go back to console. And the page is loaded, so we're going to go here, create an account, create the account, and test this frame. We were able to pull it from the page. Okay, so on the fly, I built an iframe. Now was able to interface with the iframe and work with it. So the next part I want to test is how easy is it to destroy that very iframe that I just created. So once I do functions, I actually send it back in a different function. So it's not going to be in this same place later on, but for now, if I wanted to call it, let's see, var getFrame equals, and I'm going to make sure, okay, so we have this, and let's see, how do I drop the destroy the element? Let me do a quick search on Stack Overflow. If I'm not mistaken, there's a remove element, I think it is. Remove element. Okay, so let's see. We have. I don't want to use that. Remove element by ID. Ah, that's what it was. Okay, so I have the element. That's a little trick. I knew I wanted to do something here. Okay, so I first find the element, which happens to be the iframe page, which I can look back up. So if I say iframe, and I go parent node, so I go back to the parent of the iframe, remove child, and then I say iframe, then basically I am taking the element right out from its underneath itself. So then the next thing would be to test WTW log, and I want to check. Oops, I want to check and see if it's found. So I'm going to check if and since we called the iframe test this, I'm going to check for test this. And so I'm going to see if it's found, if it's not null. Okay, and if I did the logic right, found equals, if that's not null, then it means it's found. Okay, okay, so now I'm going to check. Let's run that same code. Refresh the page. Okay, page is loaded. Create my account. Create account. It found is false. So it did remove it. And just to confirm, I want to look through here. I'm going to find the frames div right here, and there is nothing inside it. Yes, which means that we can add a frame on the fly, we can use the frame, and then destroy it afterwards. So now the best thing we could do would be, instead of putting these iframes on the page, every place it calls for an iframe, we actually generate them on the fly as needed. That's the way to do it. Okay, so with that said, console, let's go back to the page here. Okay, so in this particular one, we want to create the account, which means we are going to go through the steps. So the first thing I do is I know I want the user. So I have core frame, iframes user PHP, that's all good. This is all good. That's good. Okay, so the first thing is, in this common file someplace is, well, first I want to know where that is. I want to make sure I can find my creative count function afterwards. Oh, it was down there already, but okay. So now I want to find, I have a random. I think I could say get ID. Let me see. Nope. Okay. Get rand. Nope. Okay. Where am I? That's wrong. Random. Random string, and I tell it length. Okay. This is what I want. It's my variable. It's my function for creating variable names. So we're going to call this iframe dash plus random string, and we'll add a 16-digit random string to that. That should pretty much take care of the naming convention. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is, instead of test this, we're going to call this iframe name. That called it. That way I'm passing it with the value. I'm passing it with the whole thing. I'm going to call it back up and load it. We're going to call it iframe name. Okay, so this iframe name, we're going to make sure every page that we function and do this with gets this particular iframe name equals blank. And actually, I'm going to put that on the top just so I remember this all the time. We have button value and then iframe name. So we got it in one place. The next thing is our post. When we post and we check these values, I want the iframe name. And we're going to put it here. So now it loads it up. When it submits it, it still has the iframe name on the page. And the other part that's going to be a key to doing all this is we are going to use this function down here to pass back the iframe name, and so we can do cleanup afterwards. So it will know which iframe it used and actually kick it back out afterwards. So let's see, we have. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's set that up. We're creating the count. We're going to do a submittal, and then after it gets done submitting, we're going to, I'm just copying the frame. So I type everything the exact same way. Go through here, do that. We're going to call this one, I'm not going to need any of that stuff in there. This one's going to be create account complete. Copy that. And the first thing we're going to want is that iframe name. And we'll have to see if there's any other values that we want to pass back, but create account complete. We're going to come in here. We're going to go to the page, and what I have is, based on the different values or conditions here, this particular one, I'm going to put this one right here, and we're going to say else if, and get the framework in place, and we're going to see if button, and if that button is, okay, I don't have a button set up for what I'm going to do, so we're going to create a new button. That's just like that. The register, and if you're wondering what this on-click method is, what I do is I'm actually writing this value of what the button is that was clicked right to the B value for button value, hidden form field. The reason I do that is when I submit it and get it back afterwards, I want to know what button I clicked so that I can follow up with moving on to someplace else. So what I do is I put it in here. We have the register function, and now from here what I want to do is I'm going to call parent dot WalkTheWeb is my class, and then I'm going to run this function, and I'm going to pass back the value. And if you're just joining me, you're going to see that I use dget is a function. Well, dget is a function I created that basically is document.getElementById. I shortened it, and you wouldn't believe how many characters in code were able to shorten by that. But yet, when I see dget, it's document get element by ID. Basically, it still makes sense to me. When I see it, I know that I'm doing that whole typed in letters. So by passing it into the code this way, gets it where I don't have to keep on doing that individual piece by itself. So yeah, so that is working. Okay, and oops, I didn't mean to. Since I highlighted it and then hit enter, it doesn't help. Okay, so what'll happen is I'm going to send this frame back to this place once the function goes through, and then from here I just want it to, at this point, I'm going to tell it to take that iframe. So we're going to make var iframe equals get, and we're going to put this iframe name in here. So now that grabs the element, and then we say iframe parent node modify element, and it deletes the element. So by this time, when it finishes, I'm going to put a log event here just so we know we've gotten to this thing. Ended and deleted iframe. Okay, we'll come back and kill that out afterwards, but the first thing I want to do is make sure that we're making the full round trip, and it actually works. So we're going to go in here. We have this section. We are going to, that brings it back after this button's been pressed, but what we haven't done is anything with the button. So we're going to tell it if the button register, if it's be register, then it's going to do some code in here. We're going to have it read in the values from the posted form. We're going to go through each one of those steps. But for now, I just want to go through the paces to make sure that the iframe disappears afterwards. Okay, and so to do it, what we need to do here is I need to tell it remove child. What am I doing there? What did I do? Oh, iframe parent node remove child. Okay, no, we don't want to remove it there. We just created the page. I want to do ipage dot get element by ID, and I'm going to get, I tend to use single quotes, dot, click. I'm going to tell it to click the Be Register button. So now, I'm going to be passing in more values. I'm going to tell it to click the button on the iframe page. Then after it completes doing that, then I'm going to tell it to, then it basically does the round trip. It does the submittal of this page, so it cycles through it once, does the recording or whatever it has to do, comes over here and goes to this function on load. So when the page loads, it goes to this function. It knows now that the login response is set because that doesn't get set until it's been submitted. So on the loading page, it doesn't happen. On the posting page, it does. And then we're going to go back to our create account complete, and it's going to bounce us right to this set of code down here. And I'm going to get rid of a lot of stuff here we don't need because none of that stuff. I see one thing I might want to use, so okay, I'll leave it for a minute. We're going to get rid of this part of it that has nothing to do with anything. I was testing out some different functions earlier. Okay, so now with this, we should get the full cycle back to the JavaScript and remove the iframe after it's done using it. So let's test that out. First, we want to load the page. Okay, we have login. And I'm going to show you how quick this is actually going to do it. And then next we're going to add in the actual database function and show you that it still isn't too short or isn't too long of a time. So when I click create account, random string is not defined. Okay, let me fix that real quick. Random string, I forgot to put the class name on that function. So let's see, random string, WalkTheWeb dot random string. Now it's a function. Now it should work. Let's reload this. Okay, this, create my account, create an account, found false. Okay, so what did we find here? And why did it happen a dozen times and keep on looping through it? Okay, so this is why I'm checking and testing things. So found, why did it go back to found? Okay, why is it running my page more than once? That's something we're going to track down. Okay, so create account, be register on the user page, be register. Let me make sure I don't have more than one register function going here. Of course there's more than one register, but do I have more than one on this page? That should go just fine. And it should go here. It should not catch the end of any of that. That sends it back to account complete. And okay, create account complete. Let me see if I got more than one of those functions. If I just named that wrong. Nope, we only have one, create account complete. So and to delete iframe. I never saw those words come up. Let me see what it did do. Create count complete, cannot read property, parent node of null. Oh, because they're already, well, wait a minute. Count equals false. Okay, let's start checking things on this end, because I don't know why it kept on trying to do this after it. Get iframe name. So let's not delete that. Okay. Let me see if it gets there before we try to do that. Well, actually, we could do it this way. If iframe is not equal null, then do this step. But before I even do that, I want to check and see if we're getting here. Let's check what the name comes back with. WalkTheWeb log. And I'm going to say iframe name. iframe name equals, okay, iframe name. So that should give me a little bit of information when I get the round trip all the way back. So let's go. Okay, so refresh this page. And log in. Log in. Okay, so then create account. False. iframe name is blank. Okay, so it did not get the value there. Let's make sure we're setting. I didn't set the value. That would make a big difference. Okay, but the fact that it's repeating it is confusing to me. I don't know why it's returning more than once. Let me. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to set the value in here first. We want to make sure we're doing everything we need to on that part. And we're going to make it the iframe ID. And that is named, just so I copy and paste it so I don't type something wrong. Okay, so it's this one. Still kind of not positive why was this account, create account, why was that called more than once? And I haven't quite figured that out yet, why we've got a loop here, but I'm going to track that down because I need to know. So okay, so this should only create once. Okay, so let's get the page open here. And we're going to create the account, create account, found false, but see, it did it more than once. But see, we got a name now, which means we're going to be able to delete it, but I don't want it to be that it stops just because it deletes it. What is causing the page to reload? Is this page actually reloading? Let me check that. Or is it resubmitting? So let's go console log. Loading iframe. And let's find out what that's doing. That would cause the program to run real slow, wouldn't it? Okay, iframe loaded. Wait a minute, why did iframe load? Oh, I've got more than one of them. Okay. Let me test another piece here. Let's go into the index page, and I'm going to remark out. Oops. Sorry, it's HTML. And I'm going to remark out all of the iframes on the page, which means some other things are going to probably balk at me, and I'm going to get a couple errors related to it, but it's the best way to test what I'm trying to do. Okay, so we load up, and it doesn't have to do any of those extra iframes, which should help our load times. Create, and it's going through a loop. Okay, so we don't have any others. It is loading iframe, and it's going through, and it's bouncing and doing it repeatedly. So let's find out why is it create account? You know what? Well, there's only one function, create account. So we know that we're not doing that more than once. We know that when it hits here, we're not doing any. We click the button on the menu, and we tell it to create account. That should run it once. And just to make sure, return false. I don't think that's what's causing it, but there's no reason that it would be in loop. Not sure what's causing the loop. It would be the page reposting, or is it create account? See, loading iframe. Okay, then found is false. Loading iframe. Wait a minute, why did it load it twice? That would be the post. This is the read, and that's the end of it. Deleted iframe. Then from there, it found it false again, which means it repeated the function, and I don't know why. Iframe on load function, we're going to okay, so well, that part isn't going to say anything. Found what? Found false. Okay, so that's fine. Found this is not known. We're good there. I just want to know why it's repeating the function. It shouldn't be repeating. Shouldn't be repeating the function. I know I can kill it by killing the iframe, but I want to know what's repeating the function because it just doesn't make sense. Okay, a little bit of coming in here. Okay, create iframe. So it's only calling the function create account once. So is it, I think it's the logic here. Loading the iframe. Let me stop that for a second. That should make it not do that process. Those shouldn't be running. Huh. These, that shouldn't be, well, by value. I am setting the value. Well, there's another way to do that too. But it's going to happen more than once anyway. Okay, so I'm going to remark out that, and I want to reload this page. Somewhere I've created a loop, and I'm going to come to the end of it here. Loading iframes. So it's happening anyway. Let me find out where that's happening. Why is this page continually reloading? Iframes users, let's see. I think it's part of the iframe function. So let's take this and that out for a minute. We're not going to process it anyway, so we don't need to go in there. Let me make sure that we're not putting in a loop from the new function since I wrote all those classes and wrote a new security module about it. Okay, we have that, and create new account, create account. Nope, we still have a loop, and we don't have any of those pages going. Why is the page reloading? That would explain a bunch of memory usage, wouldn't it? This page loads, but the function only gets called once. Let me double check, make sure. Okay, we told it to create account. Create element iframe, create iframe, and then the other part I want to check here is we set the source that loads the page, then we create our, I want to see if any of these things are getting repeated. Once you set the iframe source, it's a go once. We should say onload, do this event, and we should be done with it. So I'm trying to figure out why the page is loading more than once. It appears it has a reason. See, create account, create iframe, loading iframe, unload iframe. Okay, let me check which, see if on the load event, maybe I'm grabbing the wrong thing. So let's go to our good old Stack Overflow. Okay, so iframe on the load event, well, you might as well see what I'm doing here. We're looking on Stack Overflow. It's a good place as any to find the answers. So when you do a post back, let's see, iframe, unload, function, do post back, boom, boom, log out, boom, okay. So we're going to ask iframe load callback is called multiple times. Okay, this looks like what we're getting. Yeah, it's not. Okay, so on load, frame, created a frame. This looks a lot more like what we did. Frame on load, we run a function, and then we append body child frame. Okay, so document body HN file, iframe onload, attach unload event after the iframe is added to the body. That would be a good clue. Let me find out. Okay, so iframe, append child. Okay, it's there. And then we do unload. Why would it be doing it multiple times? It seems like they ran into the same problem I did. But I got the answer where I tested it by myself. Frame unload event will be triggered twice, as in WebKit browser, Safari, Chrome. If you attach the onload before the iframe is appended to the body. So you can prevent iframe loading twice by changing your codes the following way. Body, append child frame. No, I don't have to attach it to the body. Then you'll only get one onload event, which is the event the document really loaded. Same error, devil onload case had which one, and after appending it in the page was doing one load one function two. Uploads count. Okay. Frame unload. Oh, first unload calls when its frame is blank. So if we create it, let me try putting the source before the, hey, this is all what it's all about. So we're going to just see. Okay, so instead I'm going to, before we append it to the frame, I'm going to put it here so that it knows to do that. It loads it to the thing, and then it checks the onload event. So let's see if that makes a difference. Oops, I didn't mean to click there. Apologize. Click here. We're going to go to this page. Guess I found the problem with loading it there. I could load it to the body, the document body, instead of within that div tag. I don't see there's any advantage one way or the other on that. But let's see, create account, and it's loading multiple times. Obviously, that's an issue. So let's find out if I change, instead of loading it to this frame here, let's try loading it to document body. I think that's what the other browser here said. Document body append child. Document body append child. Then the iframe that we've created right there. Okay. And let's not do that twice. That would really confuse everything. And then iframe on load function gets added afterwards. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so iframe on load, maybe I need to set the path afterwards so that it's not loaded. Let me see what that does. Wait a minute. Yeah, let me give that a try. Sometimes it's all in the order you do things, isn't it? Okay, especially in a... Nope, see, we're still loading every single time. Okay. Well, the other way around that is it can't happen again if it is gone. So, just for giggles, let's try it completely the other direction. Let's put the iframe as soon as we name it. Let's put it up there. Then we will, well, that is exactly where I had it before. Then we're going to change the source. Yeah, I don't want to do anything else with that at the moment. Okay, so the other thing we can do, and this kind of completes our process anyway, is if we look it up over here and we say We're going to delete the iframe if it exists. We're going to pull the iframe by the iframe name, which we now have. So when it goes through its process, loads up everything, then comes back after being submitted. I'm just wondering, okay, it's loading the page again, but it's not submitting it again, isn't it? Wait a minute, that's... Okay, well, it's not loading, so we need to tell it to iframe unload. We load it, and we tell it to click. Well, there's some JavaScript ways to get around it. I can create a property within the iframe itself. Let's say iframe dot clicked. No, iframe dot submitted equals 0. And here I can tell it, since we're doing the iframe function, I can do if I click it and tell it, I click it once and I say iframe dot submitted equals 1, because I'm only going to do this function once and then I'm killing it. So if I preface it with it's not submitted, and then submitted equals 1, and then here if I tell it unload, I want to tell it to if iframe submitted equals 0, oops, equals 0, then do this. Now it doesn't stop it from being in a loop, because if there's a loop happening here, it's still happening, but the one thing I'm not going to get is my form submitted over and over again, and I'm destroying my function at the end anyway, so I don't see any reason to do that. Okay, so now let's see if we get one pass through the whole thing and if it deletes it. So I'm going from here, create account, loading iframe. Okay, create account, create iframe, loading iframe. Okay, so we got that far. Let's go in here. I know that I remarked out, wait a minute. Before I do that, let's check it. Create account, create iframe, loading iframe, unload iframe, and then loading iframe. So loading iframe happened twice. Let me see. That was happening from this page, loading iframe. It happened twice. Okay, because it did submit it. So then, on the second time, now should be the only time we hit there. First time it gets loaded, second time it's the unload of this that submits and does it a second time. So from there, we should get the full path around and actually delete the iframe that it created. And we're going to confirm that by looking, create account. There it is, ended and deleted the iframe. And we're going to take a look on the page, and on the bottom of the page there are no iframes. The div is empty. Okay, we didn't put in the div. I'm going to put in the div only because, do I need it? Then I can hide the div. Anything that you bring up and when you create an iframe, the div will automatically be hidden and it'll be a layer underneath everything. So I'm going to put it in the div, and I'm going to have a special, I'll just set some properties on the div for in CSS. So while we're doing that, and notice it only happened the amount of times we expected it to. Okay, so with that done, what we have now is, next part is we're going to do pass the rest of the values and actually do something when we submit instead of just telling it to submit. Okay, we're going to put it in here, and we're going to just make sure that everything still works. We'll mark that one out for a minute. Okay, and I don't need to worry about that. I know I'm clicking that function. I know I'm getting all the way to there. So coming through here, we have, okay, and nothing going on from there. And then we're going to spit it out right here. We're going to get the iframe name, and we're going to destroy the name, which should be inside of here, knowing that we are inside the function. Okay, so now the difference is I'm going to be able to create as many iframes as I need, and only the ones I need at any one point in time, which should make this whole site work faster. So we're going to go to the console so we can see what we're doing. We're coming in here, we're creating an account, and when we submit it, there it is. We've not only submitted it, but we got the reply back that it killed off the iframe. I think we're golden. Okay, so now to make the whole process run, now that we have control of the iframe in that way, and I am going to go through anywhere there's an iframe, and I'm going to use basically the same process. I think I'm going to create a function that packages this piece of it. So the only thing you actually have to do is submit in, well, it'll be a function, let's see. Or how about a function that does all the prep work, and all you have to do is to create the iframe and everything, and all you have to do is create the onload event. So you create the iframe, you create the onload event, and you tell it the path you need it to go. That would pretty much make it customized where we can use it from anywhere. So that's the goal, is to make it where, see, while I'm creating things, I'm not only fixing code that I already have or improving it to run faster, but I am also making sure that I can that the stuff that I'm doing is reusable for a developer to create plugins and take advantage of it from that side. So when I do these kind of things, I'm making sure each one of them are complete for everything it needs to do. I believe class hidden form is what I'm looking for. Let me just double check. I don't think there was too much to this class. I think it's just straight out hide the form. Absolute position, puts it all in the back. That should be fine. And visibility is hidden and displays none, so that takes it about as hidden as you're going to get it. So I am going to take this, and I'm going to set the class on the div tag to that. So now any div we use, any part we create, and we throw it in this div tag, basically it's going to be on the lowest level of, well, it's going to be a low level of the page, and we're going to put that here. I'm not going to get rid of those until afterwards, because technically it's going to use them for other things until I go to every one of the places I called for an iframe and use this new set of code to manually set what it's going to do. So I can eliminate these shortly, because I got to get like the pages that they're going to go to and stuff. Some of them aren't going to be. Iframes can go to other sites. That's a little bit of a security thing. I may have to double check. I'll make it where I have to validate the page you're going to, because I definitely don't want to be running a page from somebody else's site in my site. Yeah, I can check for same source, that it's on that you're actually hosting it on your own site. Yeah, no problem. We can do some things like that. It'll be some validation on the plugins, so we'll make sure it happens. And validate iframe source. Okay, make sure it comes from the root domain, whatever that would happen to be. Okay, so next I have these in place. I have my frames div, which is nice, and obviously that's going to eliminate a lot of pieces off this page because I won't need any of these lines down here. My scripts, I might do something to package all the scripts into one, just so that just so I call one function and all the scripts happen. It's easier than, well, yeah, since I have load initial JavaScript, I could actually, okay, I could load all of these in that function and then I wouldn't need them here. The only thing, well, the reason I did it that way, I might have to split it in two functions. And the reason I did it that way is because the admin page, as you can see, has, I'll double check, but it loads additional functions. I know it does. There's additional things we just don't need. Oh. Well, we'll double check those before we do it. We'll also make sure that everything's loading that should. Let's see, I go from line 12 to line 35. That's 23. And here I have, well, it's easy enough to say 40 minus 13. So, okay, so 27. Okay, so there's 4 extra in there, which I know one of them is right there, 2 of them's right there, the second one, and I'm sure there's something else here that I use on the admin and not anywhere else. I'll find it. Okay, so that'll be a later type. Been a long day. I've been working on a lot of stuff. I'm going to continue this process and keep on building the login, and then I will come back another time and catch all of you later. So hope you're having a great day, and we're building WalkTheWeb, 3D internet, open source. So join me again, click follow if you haven't already, and I'll see you on next time.